Ready.
Hello everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Thanks very much to be with us for this week devoted to transdisciplinary aspects inside research. Hello everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Thanks very much to be with us. So these thematics this week will be devoted to research and training educational aspects of transdisciplinarity. Thanks a lot all the organizers and speakers of the day. So we'll have the pleasure to listen some people from all over the world. I will be first speaker as Florent Pasquier. Then we'll have Javier Colado Jueno. I'm in France. He's in Ecuador. And then we'll have Paul Gibbs, director of the Center for Education, Research and Scholarship in University Middlesex in Great Britain. Javier is responsible. He will present himself at the good moment. Unfortunately, Daniel Niera, who is from professor in Chile, can't be with us today due to technical problems. Then Raymond Ye, Senior Research Fellow in the University of Texas at Austin, we will have the pleasure to listen him. And then Magda Stavinsky in Romania will conclude our cycle of presentations. This will last for 2 hours in total, and we'll keep the last hour for exchanges with the audience and all together. And next Friday, we will have a roundtable with 9 other speakers, all members of the CIRET, which is one of the main organizers of this Congress. So I will start my presentation now. If you can engage the timer, please, in order I not be too long. I'm looking for my presentation. Here it is. How to make a transdisciplinary pedagogy operational. This is the goal of my talk of the day I would like to share with you. I have to warn you that I add a trick in my conversation. So please try to be focused if you can find it before the end. I'm associate professor in education sciences at Paris Sorbonne University and new president of CIRET after Basarab Nicolescu from last year. And we are all co-organizers of this World Congress. I would like to start my presentation by continuing Basarab Nicolescu's one. He was asking us how to overcome new barbarism and what are they. And I would like to offer some proposals. So we will remind what is transdisciplinarity about, how to avoid false dichotomies, and I will express some proposition like a human temple. I will introduce complexity in this human temple, and we'll discuss how we can use it for benevolent education and achieve a transdisciplinary education. I will explain the process I use for this, which is a triple crossing, and how we can apply it in transformative workshops as first example in educational field, and also how to implement an integrative methodology for a pedagogy of involvement. And then it will be time for the conclusion. So Basarab Nicolescu analyzed violence as a rise of new barbarisms. He called them pan-terrorism, Anthropocene, biodiversity, and transhumanism. His presentation is already online, so the audience will have time to see it again later. He said that new barbarism introduces a radical feature. The alien is not outside, but inside us, which means we are our own barbarians, and the first starting of the violence comes from the inside of us. So he suggested some ways to overcome violence. First step should be to realize a strong transdisciplinary sustainability. He called it TDSS. The goal is to discover a new intelligence and consciousness as well for individuals and for collectives. This needs a global education for TDSS, transdisciplinary strong sustainability. And it will go to develop a SSP, strong sustainability of peace, which involve the spiritual evolution of the whole humanity, about 7 billion people. Because we have to fulfill the gap from now and the spiritual underdevelopment of the human being, which is the real cause of the problems we are dealing with now. So he said also that all war should be declared as a crime against humanity, and all means of destruction should be destroyed. The first sentence is precisely the goal of an NGO based in Korea, HWPR, which is working hard in UNESCO, UNO organizations to propose exactly this goal, to declare all war as crime against humanity. In a positive way, the right for each human being to live and be kept in peace. And this took place in our post-modernity time. So this new spirituality we are looking for should be a sustainable spirituality until a new renaissance, which is TDSS, strong transdisciplinarity sustainability. So what is transdisciplinary about? This is a quite reminder of the transreality process, which Basarab shows last time. Also, here is another example he shows with what I call the false dichotomies. So this means, as Krishnamurti said, the observer is observed, and which is a good illustration of that everything starts from our own, from the inside of each of us. And we have to climb level by level to increase our consciousness and overcome dichotomies, appearance of dichotomies. So I proposed a synthesis of how we could engage in a transdisciplinary approach of reality for human king. I call this the human temple. You will understand why very soon. The first part of this temple is the basis I call the Anthropocene level, which is an expression of the hidden third, and which is going from centuries to centuries, from shamanism, societies, religions, knowledge, wisdom, spirituality, consciousness, and so on. I will propose you to engage now in few very short exercises to illustrate this temple. So we start with this Anthropocene level, and I propose you to remind in your own where did you born? What was your life as a child? What was your relations with your family, with your society, your neighbors, your communities, your administrations, which are all parts of your real life now in the Anthropocene time. And this conduces your life in a certain direction, of course. Let's start to build this temple with the first column, which is composed by our biological, physical, and energetical aspects. So I can propose you now to have the control of your body, just to stretch yourself, stretch your arms, move a little bit the upper side of your body. Breathe deeply. Feel this air, atmosphere entering inside your body, nourishing it, helping to have a good health condition. And then also we can make a funny, quick exercise. If you start to put your hands like this, fingers until fingers, make one going down, keep your one finger in your thumb, and then start to climb a scale. This is brain gym. This is to coordinate your body, and then you can go down. Okay, let's finish this first relax exercise of the control of the body. Second pillar deals with our emotional and sensitive aspects. I propose you to have a self-inspection, contact your heart, contact your emotions, and feel how you are inside. How do you feel inside? Do you have some positive emotions? Do you feel sadness, perturbations? Contact this, and in 3 seconds, I will count until 3. You can show this sign, a cloud, or this one, a sun, something sunny. So think about what you would like to show. 1, 2, 3. I see someone doing things very different from my idea, but it's okay. Every sign is welcome. On my side, I have part sunny and part cloudy, because I feel maybe a little bit stressed with all this organization and so on. But finally, it's good. I come back to my first pillar and I can breathe a lot to calm myself. Third pillar is composed by mental and cognitive aspects of the human being. This is the one we have to learn to calm, and we can deal with biology and emotion control to calm the mental. We have to learn to orientate it in order he focused and he not goes in every different directions in the same time. So we have a lot of tools also for this. One I love a lot stands for 5 minutes. It's the cardiac respiration. And we are focused on the ball, which is climbing up, declining, climbing up, declining more and more slowly. It's like hypnotism. And it's very good to calm the mind, emotion, and body and keep good health, and then stay focused, concentrate on our objectives. Fourth pillar is very important. Everything is very important. It's group and social links. Because of course, we learn and we evaluate by ourselves, but most of the time, it's easier, faster, stronger if we are involved in this way with a group or with social links. There is a lot of exercise to improve it, but we are too numerous now for this. And with numeric relation, digital relation, it's not so easy. Last pillar deals with the post-metaphysic aspects we called previously existentialism. It deals with axiology. And I propose for this exercise for each of us to think about the most important value which conduct our life. What is my fundamental ethic, my reason to live, why I'm here, what I want to do, what I want to express in my everyday life. This is very important to help me to never lose my way or my path on the way of my life. It's time now to conclude, to finish this human temple with the roof, the ontological level, which deal us until this: know yourself and you will know the universe and the gods. It was wrote on the roof of Delft Temple. This is an expression, one of the expressions of the included third. We have now the full aspects of what we can deal with, what we can work with in order to elaborate a strong transdisciplinary education. I'm just briefly introducing complexity. This is the same temple, but fractalized, because of course, each of the 7 elements is included in the 6/1. So we can, this is in French, I'm sorry, I forget to translate it, but you can recognize the 7 main parts of the sample, and you can appreciate that each of us, each one of these parts are linked with others and are part of the others. I'm going fast on these aspects. So how to achieve this? I will show 2 examples. They are coming from a triple crossing I'm proposing as operational aspect to find the best ways and make links between the self-improvement, the know-how to be, the professional development, know how to do, and the community development, know how to become. Most of the time, those 3 aspects are separate, and then I propose to make a junction between them in order to join the hidden third and find the best way to express our relation with the hidden third and have concrete, real action on real life. I can already focus on two aspects of this transdisciplinary education, which are learning to live well together, which was the political project of Paulo Freire, and try to increase our humanistic values in the educational processes. So I'm practicing this from many years now. First way to practice this, I call this the transformative workshop. A transformative workshop might be used for everyone, everywhere. We were several people to express this methodology. The idea, like in popular education, is the sharing of knowledge in order to learn how to living good all together. So there is 5 steps we propose to make this operative. Firstly, the assembly have to establish a benevolent relational protocol for all the group based on listening, benevolence, acceptance, dialogue, and so on. Then everyone must present himself, says what he's here, what did he expect, and explaining its experience and knowledge also. When everyone have done this, after the 3rd steps, we can build a curricula collectively in order to express and change and co-learning from each of the participants of the audience. This means that we try also to involve the 7 parts of the human temple we've seen before. And very important, we encourage each participant to keep a diary after the sessions to express for themselves what they've done and what they think about it. This is called metacognition process. Another a protocol I imagine is called integrative methodology for a pedagogy of involvement. I use this in academic system and scholar systems with 2 main principles. A multi-referential integration from the teacher, which means to use various schemes and methods of learning, always be in the and also and not the only or the but. And second pillar is the involvement of the learner in the action of learning from himself and with the group. This means to authorize the learner to become itself author, the author of his life. This is very based on Carl Rogers' statements in education, approach centered on the person, non-directive pedagogy, and to become more a facilitator than a teacher. I use this PII in a lot of my lessons in academic context, mainly with the use and the learning of digital tools. And I focus on transversal domains like humanistic culture, prevention of conflicts, the culture of peace, living together, and the well-being education. And we can enter on these topics and most other ones as much as the other audience is interested. So it's always the same process. First lesson starts with a welcome snack, and then the students choose by themselves the subjects of learning. They are joining in working groups. Then we have the different lessons. And last one is devoted to a collective presentation to the class group. So we have the sharing of the knowledge made by the students by themselves. This was an example about cyber stalking. I'm passing fast. So what assessment of this form of pedagogy? This is the very short one. You remember the sun or the cloud. Most of them, these students, future teachers in primary school, seems to appreciate it's a very short evaluation. Just also we have sometimes very few words to express at the end of the lesson. They feel relaxed, in a good mood, peaceful, calm. Some are tired. It depending of each of them, of course. Then also I made an assessment with their agreement by analyzing their diaries. And what they said most of the time in their diaries is that they appreciate the multitude of tools they can discover by themselves and with the group. They loved the autonomy, but there is some requirements to be autonomous. So this is prerequisite we have to work with also. They like the benevolent methodology, and they like the free of the speech, and that anyone is free to speak when they want. As a teacher, sometimes it's very hard because they can be rude with me because I represent authority and academy, and most of them might suffer in this context. And when I offer a free space for a free speech, they enter in something maybe much more therapeutic than academic. But it's part of the human temper. And as a teacher, I have to deal with this too, of course. And this further assessment is made by a digital tool, Iramutech, which analyzed all the diaries and created word cloud. And we see allowance, listens, meditation, groups, bot, find, work together, resources, learning, professor, etc. And the other one are LEMS. So LEMS are showing semantic links between these words. I'm approaching the conclusion. It's not very easy to implement a transdisciplinary pedagogy, especially with the use of digital tools, because in France, schools and academies are not full with digital tools. We much more experiment the loss and the lacks of materials in classroom, unlike other countries. Also, we can observe phenomena of competition because they were always educated from very young age to be competitive, to get the medals, to be first at the classment. This is something we have to educate to overcome competition, to cooperation, which is a strong, which is part of the SSDT, strong durability education of peace education. So we have also to learn how to deal with the phenomena of exclusions. Human doesn't born as a man, but first as a social animal, said Erasmus. And we have to learn how to become human from our animal background. So we have also to deal with excitement factors, especially with young pupils in schools. They can scream, they can have extravagant dances when they learn, when they pass from a level, from a stage to another one. So, in conclusion, I would like to say transdisciplinary approaches in education leads us to change from the old educational paradigm to a totally new one. I would like to say not only a humanistic one, because unfortunately humanism, l'humanisme des Lumières, shows now its border, its limits. We are really engaged in a human education, not only a humanistic education, but a true human education. We have to overcome the just face-to-face pedagogy, the punishment of error, the culture of assessment, of comparison. We have to learn to live together with a global approach, with a complex approach, with a human approach. And this way, I suggest we are construct it with the students by involving them in this path. En español se dice camino caminando. Nothing is already done forever. Everything is here to be experienced and constructed all together. This is my way, how I imagine what is transdisciplinary education. But for this, of course, we have to improve, to conduct, to continue researchers, to implement them in our practices. And with the analysis of our practices, we can enrich the comprehension and the experience of the researchers. This is what will very soon Javier Collado Bueno speak about. I appreciate a lot your kind attention. I thank you for this. And now I'm concluding. Did you find what was the trick which was hidden in my presentation? It's not very easy to find it. I try to help you. If I change the presentation in such way, is it still partage? Yes. So maybe you can observe that my first diapositive was white, and then we cross, you and I, a long path, a long way from the dark side to the white one. It's an alchemic path. You know, transdisciplinarity wants to join the knowledge from the ancient people to the totally new research. This is what we call in alchemy the dark pies to the white pies and the conclusion with the red one. So I will encourage you to increase your knowledge about this. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I'm pleased to let Javier to present himself and his work. Thanks a lot. Javier, please.
Thank you very much, Florent. It was a very nice presentation. I'm very happy to be here with you all. I wanted to say thank you to Julieta and Florent for the organization of this event. And I wanted to apologize with the others college, with Paul and Raymond, and also with Magda, because I speak Spanglish. So sometimes I have the hobby to invent some words. So I'm really sorry, but this is the way we speak here in Ecuador. And I'm going to share with you my presentation. You can see now in the screen. And the title, according to the invitation, is How to Operationalize Transdisciplinary Research. How we are doing that here in the Ecuadorian institution. So first of all, I have to make a reflection in my introduction about how we have to think in the practice and theoretical way. So how to practice the pedagogical theories and how to theorize the educational practice. This is tautology, but this is also an important question in order to understand much better what we are doing as teachers and how we integrate transdisciplinary vision in our practice. So we have two big dimensions, the theory and the practice. So pedagogy is the science that studies the theory, and education is focusing on practice, right? So complexity pedagogy means teaching methods with theorization of practice, philosophical reflection, development of critical thinking, intellectual emancipation, abstract and creative thinking. And at the same time, in a parallel universe, let's say, on between theory and practice, we are practicing the theory. Didactic praxis is necessary as well. Contextual experimentation, socio-environmental transformation is very important in our practice, and artistic manual work is also complementing the abstract and creative thinking. So all together, and according to the third include, we have to develop an acquired knowledge in order to feel, think, and acting in harmony and sustainable way with our nature. So we are trying to do so here in Ecuador, and I will explain you some cases that we are working on. And first of all, we have to understand what means transdisciplinarity, right? According to Basarab Nicolescu and many other authors, we have to understand that there exist different levels of reality, and in this imagine, we are understanding the ontological reality with the different level, the chemical level, biological level, ecological level, and cosmic level. And according to the science, there are so many sub-levels, micro-levels, inside of each level. For example, we have the subatomic particles or quantum physics inside of the chemical levels, right? And everybody knows that. So we are trying to understand how the matter and energy are organizing in our world and in the world universe. At the same time, we as observers and subjects, we are also creators. This is our epistemological reality. And we have different models of representation of our reality. So we use art, culture, science, religion, spiritualities, shamanism, and technologies in order to understand what are the level of ontological universe and nature, right? So this is an abstract of our thinking about what was going on, how we approach in a transdisciplinarity level the understanding of the living and non-living matter in our reality. But this is not new. This has been studied and it has been used for so many religions in the past. So science is not a new approach to our reality, because according to so many religions, as we can see here, sorry, let's move. So according to so many religions, they have been studying the level of reality and the level of selfhood in very deepest. So as we can see in this imagine, Hinduism, Buddhism, Chinese religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they are the most important religions in the human history, but they also make an approximation about ontological levels and the selfhood levels. So we can see here an inter-epistemological dialogue between all those religions. And here in the middle, we have the flower of life and the Vitruvio of Leonardo da Vinci, right? So we are trying in so many times, in so many civilizations, to understand what are the levels of our reality that I have already explained here in the previous slide, right? So why the human being is all the time trying to observe and to understand much better how nature is working and how is the coevolution working in our universe. So this is very important to understand what means transdisciplinary approach, right? So what we are doing here in Latin America, and more specifically in Ecuador, I'm going to tell you about some experience, academical experience. First of all is the Global Education Magazine. It was founded in 2012. It was the birth was in Rio de Janeiro, Rio +20, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. And we have been working 5 years in this experience. We meet a lot of people, as we will see later. And this academic journal tried to make a dialogue between Nobel awards and also UNESCO directors, but also teachers from Indonesia, Philippines, South Africa, and so many other areas of the world. So our intention was to create an international education framework in order to understand much better what's going on in education and in universities, but also primary and secondary levels around the world. I said, I had the opportunity to meet so much important people, like we can see some of Peace Nobel Awards in South Africa, also in India, and we also meet so many directors of UNESCO. We meet Basarab Nicolescu so many times, and other important people talking about transdisciplinary approach. So this experience makes more than 5 million of visitors worldwide, and we still have a lot of internautas that they are visiting our project. So it is still online, and this is a very good example about how we create a transdisciplinary dialogue in academic framework. There are also many videos that I invite you all to visit here on Vimeo.com. This is our channel to visit the videos and the interview we made. But this journal was most focused on writing interviews, right? So the next project that I will present you is The Lost Art of Education, El Arte Perdido de la Educación in Spanish. This is a series of documentaries that we are trying to pick up all the transdisciplinary visions, and let's see what's going on in some schools around the world. So today we are making films in order to record this kind of experiences, and we have two big experiences in Ecuador and also in Spain. I will show you a short video of 2 minutes on Ecuador with English subtitles in order to understand much better how we are we traveled to the Amazon in order to understand how the indigenous people are using the medicinal plants in order to cure themselves, and how are they doing rituals, because for them the plants are spirits of the ancestor, and they show the future, and they can take much more better decision about the future because the ancestors are following them in the decision. But they also we also show in the documentary how Afro-descendant people here in Ecuador are using arts, dance, and spirituality in order to create much better education, more sensible, and to raise awareness about the world we are living all in. So with your permission, I will share with you this short video.
Es alegría, es amor, es paz, es armonía a mi corazón. Tengo paz y siempre me siento mejor.
El pueblo afroecuatoriano, el arte ha sido toda una vida el tema de la resistencia. Nos permitió resistir en ese proceso transatlántico de esclavitud. ¿Qué fue que los llevó a juntarse y de entender que todos eran esclavos? Fue el arte, y fue descubrir que tenían el mismo sonido. Ese fue un arte, y eso fue la resistencia.
Estos conocimientos ya casi totalmente está perdido. Entonces nosotros queremos recuperar, porque nuestros hijos deben saber esto ancestralmente que nuestros abuelos que nos dejó. El arte está perdiendo.
El arte está perdido en la educación. Y entonces nosotros tenemos un gran desafío y ese desafío es justamente incursionar en esas mallas curriculares, cómo son, cómo están planteadas. Y desde nuestra perspectiva ha sido darle un giro a esta propuesta de malla curricular, en donde nosotros tenemos que comprender, entender, tener esa sensibilidad, porque esa es otra forma de hacer arte, la comprensión de estos lenguajes artísticos que representan a cada uno de los pueblos y nacionalidades que nos representan como un Ecuador diverso.
El arte está perdido en la educación, eso es obvio, ¿no? La educación del siglo XX desalojó al conocimiento sensible, al pensar sensible, al hacer sensible. Lo desalojó en provecho de un conocimiento moderno, articulado, supuestamente eficaz.
Well, this was the first documentary. In Ecuador, we have another one in Spain that you can visit in this link, elarteperdidoDeLaeducación.com. And it is very important to highlight that this had been done by 3 institutions, the regional Amazon University here in Ecuador, the Arts University in the coast, and we are in the high mountains in the National University of Education. We worked together with so many professors and students, and we create this series. The next documentaries, we are focused to visit Mexico, Brazil, and also Italy in order to understand how the indigenous people uses their knowledge about their understanding of the nature and the universe in order to create, for example, in Mexico, the pyramids and so many other buildings, because it is very important to understand how the Maya and the Aztecas people feel the nature, how they feel the energy of the nature, and how they create so the pyramids according to the Orion stellar, right? So this is very important, and we want to create a transdisciplinary dialogue, trying this knowledge and this wisdom from ancestral people in order to understand how we teachers should create and how we should organize our lessons in the classroom, how we create this energy. So this is a transdisciplinary dialogue. We will have to have some money in order to travel and with all the equipment and make this documentary. We are still loss of the money because we don't have so much financial resources, but we are looking for, and we hope one day we can do it. So this is the country we want to visit in our filmmaking transdisciplinary experiences. Another experience, transdisciplinary experience we are working on right now is in virtual reality and artificial intelligence as a transdisciplinary research. For example, we applied to our UNESCO funds in this website, UNESCO Diversity of Cultures. So we want to create an interactive software where our students can learn about the diversity, cultural diversity of Ecuador, and also the megadiversity biology that we have here in Ecuador and also in Latin America, and create an experimental virtual reality game and also 3D game. So this is very important. So we apply for 100,000 euros or dollars, I don't remember, but a lot of money in order to create this video game. We are still waiting because the resolution will be ready on February. So let's cross fingers in order to make this project along the Catholic University of Cuenca. So we have all the program already done. We want to record and to make histories about the nationalities, how they have spiritual approach with nature and the universe, and put that in a language that our students feel more comfortable, like is video game and virtual reality. This is the approach, the philosophical approach we have to the video game. Summa causae, or also translate into good living, is a philosophical point of view here for the indigenous people, that they understand the nature and the human being together in the same process of coevolution. So this video game will have a decolonial point of view, a transdisciplinary approach, and also intercultural point of view. So with this point, we will hope that everybody, the young people here in Ecuador and beyond, because it will be ready on internet for free and translated into French, Spanish, Quechua, and also English, of course, and maybe Chinese, in order that people could learn much more about our world here in Ecuador, a small country, but with so many diversity. So this is basically what we want to do, the reevaluation of practice, knowledge and ancestral worldviews of our peoples and nationalities in Ecuador. Finally, as conclusion, we think that the most important problem that we are facing as humanity is, of course, the global change. And global change means a lot of dimension, like climatic change, and loss of biodiversity, of course, nitrogen cycle, chemical pollution, and all these dimensions we are facing. So this is very important for us to understand in a transdisciplinary way that everything is interconnected, and especially thanks to the technologies. And we have to try as humanity to make a more cooperative framework in order to face those problems that, as well, Florent Pasquier said before, in the Anthropocene, we are facing altogether. But our focus is very different than traditional academy. For example, we are talking about regenerative cultures or regenerative development. This is very different because usually the international organization, like for example, United Nations or UNESCO, they are talking about sustainable development. As you know, I'm sorry for this word, but I feel that sustainability, the word or the term sustainability, has been prostituted. Totally. They are calling green diesel but we are still putting hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. So this cannot be green because we are making a lot of pollution, right? So sustainability is not a concept already available in our understanding, because since the decade of 1970, when the Club of Rome published the limits of the growth, we know we have overpassed the biophysical regeneration of our nature, our planet, right? So we have to put more nature. We have to regenerate our ecosystem. And this is very different, because sustainable development is focused in the minimization of our action as humans in our planet, but regenerative cultures or regenerative development is focused in the maximization of our action in our planet. So we can create business at the same time that we get money, but at the same time we can make a better health for the nature and for the planet, right? So this is a very important rupture, epistemological disruption that we have to highlight, right? This is also fundamented in the Maria Montessori methodology, because this kind of education was already created 1 century ago with Maria Montessori. She was a genius, and we are still using this kind of pedagogical and educational approach. And as a final conclusions, I really think that if we look into the future, there will be many changes that will transform our reality and the way in which we humans connect with other humans, with ourselves, and with the nature and with the cosmos, right? Like, for example, quantum computers. It is still a little, still learning, still soon in order to have a very qualitative quantum computers, but humans are working on. Artificial intelligence. We all know that mathematical algorithms on Facebook and Twitter and so many social media, they are using this kind of artificial intelligence to understand and to give us much better advisor and so many others. Nanotechnology, biotechnology, virtual reality glasses. Facebook and Google are putting millions of dollars in here, and contact lens with internet access. This is already being used by the military forces in the United States. DNA, genetic mutation, is another important change that will transform the way in we are living. Artificial intelligence, already say, sorry, robotics, space travels, and contact with extraterrestrial intelligent life, and other techno-cultural revolution that we will see in the future. So as positive and final message, I think that this philosophy of postmodern education, in which we humans are integrated and feeling, acting, and thinking together with the universe, it will allow us to be ready for the future with the great civilization challenge that we are facing right now. In order to know a little bit more about our job, you can visit this website. And one more time, again, I really would like to say thank you so much to you all. And again, sorry for my Spanglish. And I hope that you understand everything, and I hope that you enjoy our reflection. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Javier. Thank you very much for your nice and animated presentation. I encourage everyone who would like to know more about your work, of course, to consult your website. And we are perfectly on time. So I propose we calmly continue the presentations. I saw on the chat already people asking things or making comments. I will encourage you to be patient until the end of the presentations, and we'll have a long time all together for discussion. So please, Paul, we are glad now to listen you. I let you present yourself in the way you prefer. Thanks. For about 20 minutes.
Thank you so much. Well, my first task is to thank the two speakers before me who were extraordinary. My job now is to show you what ordinary is. And so I'm now going to attempt, first of all, is to find the slides, which I'm having slight difficulty with at the moment. So excuse me why I'm doing this, and then I'll be able to join you. I'm sorry, I guess this is not coming up. Let me try again. Forgive me.
It's okay, no problem.
I think we may be here now.
Yes, we have so much to think about.
Oh, quite clearly. Are we okay now? Thank you. Well, first of all, thank everybody who may be listening. I hope you'll find this presentation has some value to you. What I'm going to try to talk about today is a more kind of historic perspective for transdisciplinarity, and to talk a little about the notion of transdisciplinarity and its being. First of all, I want to say is we must consider that to teach, we must teach something, and we must recognize that what we seek to do and why. In Confucian texts, this is self-cultivation. In European texts, it has its roots in perfection, both divine and secular. If we fail to understand this as teachers, we're caught in Tolstoy's dilemma from his Confessions, in which he states, in reality, I was still confronted with the same insolvable problems of how to teach without knowing what I was teaching. I address this issue adopting the university of realities developed by the medieval philosopher Duns Scotus and evident in Spinoza and much more recently in the work of Deleuze. Scotus has a number of arguments for universal predication, which holds that the eternal being of God and the moral being of humanity are as one and against a doctrine of analogy. There is only one concept of being, which is both sacred and secular. It is universal, and this wholeness is the first of the transcendentals and is indifferent to forms of being. This is a functional argument that leads to the identification of a foundational and preeminent being, not just a human being, but of all beings in its totality. For Duns Scotus, there are three coexistent universals of being, and these are in addition to the one. They are truth, beauty, and the good. The transcendentals are those attributes of things which transcend Aristotle's 10 categories of substance. The individual of this being allows us to will change, turning potentiality into self-change through the rhythms of being with others. The role of education seems evident then, and it offers insights into how we might balance external causal forces and our actions under self-volition. We've seen how these external causes are enacting with ourselves through the two previous presentations. However, this can't be deterministic, but neither is it unencumbered. It requires a blending of knowledges and realities in order that we might have the power to reflect and deliberate about the impact to be achieved by our actions. It is the will's inclination for justice, nurtured by an awareness of the transcendentals, that plays an important role in enabling our freedom, fulfillment, contentment, and self-actualization. This, for me, is transdisciplinary. In an extract from a Confucius grandson, Zizi, the link for teaching and learning is explicit. For instance, he states, the master said, to love learning comes close to wisdom. Practice with diligent effort comes close to compassion. To know shame comes close to courage. To know these three things, then, is to know how to cultivate courage. To know these three, similarly, we find in Kant advocating that based on the unconditional rather than conditional, duties ought to pursue the cultivation of any capabilities, whatever, for furthering ends set by reason. And in Emerson, that's the third chap in the slide, the notion of self-reliance is central to one's contribution to community. Our realities are in a flow with complexity and causation. This flow of realities is conceived as an open system in which possible worlds emerge and realities are perceived as indeterminate and realized dependently on the location of becoming. It is in this primary sense of becoming as potentiality, as energy and power, that enables the capacity to bring about change in other things and in ourselves. Responding to these challenges is paramount to create new transdisciplinary knowledge, or gnosis. In knowledge, if knowledge is understood as transdisciplinary, then its mode of production and justification is located outside discipline-based episodic practices. Furthermore, if in addition to an emergent level, a qualitatively new outcome is involved in the causal processes, then the knowledge required can no longer be generated by additive pooling of the knowledges of the various disciplines concerned, but requires a whole integration or genuine transdisciplinarity. The formal condition for this depends on complexity and emergence. Allowing understanding to emerge unshackled and alongside forms of abstract, logical, rational investigation opens up new realities and new truths. Moreover, it allows letting the nature of being of things come into the context of the present, the responsible and liberated becoming. For Freire, when discussing higher education, this means that we cannot separate technical training from political comprehension, because we cannot ignore what the purpose of this technical aspect is. The problem is really not whether we must train to fulfill monetary and momentary demands efficiently, but rather that we must consider what is implied by anticipating what is going to be done. The transcendental goal is to generate fundamental questions for deep inquiry into the value and nature of things, a sense of the intrinsic value of knowledge, and to elicit a sense of wonder and mystery. We can find this in everything we do, and by making it conspicuous, we make its presence at hand available to us through self-cultivation. Helping this, I suggest 3 premises for a pedagogy that embraces self-cultivation. First, to reveal the importance of the balance of the particular, singularity and commonality in shaping our being and enabling our fulfillment in our becoming within and with the world. This requires facing the paradox of one and many in teaching and allows diverse voices to be heard without compromise, but in the rhythm within the group. Second, to show ways in which capabilities can be manifest in the presence of our being in the world with others, and to realize through this the potential to develop ways of seeing and knowing that influence the ways in which all disciplines are taught. And finally, to enable the student's will to harness her latent capabilities and to actualize them for the well-being of self and for others. This is formed in the dialectic of self-consciousness. Such self-cultivation pedagogy would grip silence in educational time by disrupting the busyness of life to provide empty curriculum, thus giving time to think, rather than smothering students under the blanket of the noise of information. Silence from others opens spaces for creating and opening up to the world and to ourselves, and to generate new meanings, aims, and content. Such silence allows for thoughts that disclose, but are not necessarily defendable in the discourses of disciplinary narratives of sameness. Silence is personal and willed, and would liberate the student from the notion of collective student. Such silent self-cultivation can awaken a potential for being that may rupture our taken for granted being in the world with others, and facilitates willed liberation of self-imposed oppression from the learned helplessness imposed by powerful others. This idea is historically embedded in Bildung. Well, Homburg writes in the theory of Bildung that the proceeds of our mind, particularly in its more mysterious effects, can be fathomed only by deep reflection and unceasing observation. But even this achieves little unless at the same time we pay attention to the differences between minds and to the variety of ways in which the world is reflected in different individuals. The exploration of the ways in which causal powers bring us into becoming provide the potential for us to understand our life's project through will and freedom to achieve it. This requires a blending of knowledges and realities in order that we might have the power to reflect and deliberate in silence and in communities on the impact to be achieved by our actions. This process is captured by Niculescu when he argues that change does not create a new person, but a person reborn. Investigations of our being provide the potential for us to understand our life's project and to seek it. The truth that we are in a limited world is not a fact, but a negotiation based on emergence and spirituality, as well as causation. When framed in beauty, truth, and goodness, personal agency can flourish. Our individuality is the freedom with which we can make choices as to our becoming in the rhythmic flux of this unity. And education might function as a lens on the dignity of humanity. Moreover, it satisfies the criteria of emergence, as I already mentioned. This, as I have inferred, is the unity of Bildung, and universities should provide the conditions necessary for an informed discussion of national and local issues, where ethics and politics constitute substantive elements of the debate. It is the place for freedom of thought, of self-expression, and of responsibility to self and to others. Self-cultivation is embodied in individuals and revealed through forms of transdisciplinary pedagogy. Lecture is an enabler of encounters which balance the particulars and singularities of their students in what they teach in ways in which have world relevance. Students, through their studies, seek to critically realize for them the beauty of truth and deplore corruption of power through the self-cultivation of their capabilities. This requires a reversal of the concentration of power in government and its agencies, is exercised more easily on a homogeneous mass than when engaging with free-thinking individuals. Such pedagogical interventions expect student self-development as central, spiritual, and secular to be the center of education. It structures content, reason, and assessment to be political and morally relevant to a world in which the student exists as individuals, and it fosters a culture which develops self-agency through confronting episodic injustice as evident in the treatment of Islam in the UK higher education system. There are difficulties in trying to integrate freedom and moral self-cultivation, and the use of ready-made lists of values to be internalized by students is clearly inappropriate. The underpinning of the pedagogy of self-cultivation confronts the commodification of all those in higher education and encourages accountable action and changes in the way in which we formulate challenges. It seeks to reveal through the curriculum examples of the good, the beautiful, and the thoughtful, whilst not hiding the opposites and providing a place one might dwell during the process of seeking. This is in itself a challenge. The notion that our higher education is indeed becoming, not present. It encourages all in higher education to speak out wisely, with courage, care, and responsibility for what is good and dignified humanity. Finally, such a pedagogy is dangerous to enact, for it confronts the knowledges and ways of power of the powerful. The alternative is servitude to inequalities and the excesses of the few. International events of 2020 have shown how far we have lost our freedom in this world. Universities now, more than ever, need to alleviate oppression through the nurturing and liberation of individuals through self-cultivation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your fantastic presentation in 2 languages for the PowerPoint part. Thanks a lot. We appreciate a lot your intervention. And you're perfectly on time. We have some more minutes with us. So maybe if you allow me, because we still have some moments with you, we could offer the possibility to the audience on YouTube, if someone have to leave before the end of the presentations in 40 minutes, maybe we can accept 1 or 2 questions, short ones, from the audience, only for those who can't stay until the end of the presentations. I'm looking on the YouTube chat. If someone would ask something to Javier or Paul, only because they will leave soon. There is a question of Victoria for Javier. Maybe we can just take this one. Javier, if you agree, she says on YouTube, she says, how to conciliate the profound changes modernity will bring very soon and the local indigenous cultures. Do you feel to answer this now, or we have 2 minutes for this? And after, just another question to Paul, how to cultivate the transcendentals. So first, Javier, please, how to conciliate, and then to Paul.
Thank you, Florent. Yes, to transform the curriculum in our Ecuadorian institution is a challenge, and we need the support of our authorities. And with this pandemic crisis, it's quite more difficult, but we are still forcing and pressing our authorities in our institutions. There are no magical solutions, but a very good point is to put on the table transdisciplinary experiences that had been successful, and then try to convince the authorities in order to get more permission to put more transdisciplinary approach in our curriculum. This is not very difficult because usually the authorities are aware about the indigenous cultures that we have in Ecuador, so all of them have to respect and revalue the indigenous knowledge, ancestral knowledge, but also Afro-Ecuadorian people. So it is not easy, but we are putting in. And for example, as we say in the documentary, in our collective imaginarium, there is still much work to do, because if you are walking in the street of Ecuador, you don't see the name of the street is not, they don't recognize the indigenous people and Afro-Ecuadorian people. They only recognize the name of very aristocratic people and the colonization people like Cristobal Colombo and so many others. So pedagogical, the education transformation means social transformation. So we are working on that way.
Thank you very much, Javier, for your answer. Maybe we will come back on those subjects later. Paul, you have 2 questions. We can maybe join in one. Which particular virtues should educators and parents have in mind when coaching young people to become fully self-cultivated individuals? And how to cultivate the transcendentals?
Thank you. Both questions are critical and to the core of my point. I think if we take the second question, it's the transcendentals, which are the core to our understanding of what self-cultivation is. I particularly feel that the Confucian idea of self-cultivation, which looks at compassion, it looks at wisdom, and it looks at truth and responsibility are the issues that underpin our ability to see within our world the universal notions of beauty, truth, and oneness. The ways in which that can be done are to point them out. This isn't arguing that there are the notion of beauty, for instance, isn't the set notion of beauty. It isn't an authoritative notion of beauty. But in the processes of discussing what beauty may be, it allows individuals to cast an eye upon, to reflect upon, to see coming forth from within both themselves and in the items in the whole world. Beauty for me then reduces the significance of the subject. It reduces the importance of humanity in the notion of our world. And to be able to see beauty in others as well as within ourselves needs to be guided. That's what an academic or a teacher, I believe's function. It isn't to determine what these transcendentals are. It is rather to offer ways in which individuals can see them for how they believe beauty ought to be perceived, or truth, or indeed the oneness of our being.
Thank you very much to our two speakers for their answers and explanations. So now I realize just now we have a happy birthday with Raymond Ye. You are in a beautiful place to join the conversation. So please, Ray, we're very glad now if you can open your microphone. We will be pleased to listen you. I prefer you present yourself maybe more deeply than I've done before. Thank you. That's your turn.
Okay, thank you. I'm sort of overwhelmed by the previous three speakers in your different presentations, and it's wonderful to learn. I'm just a beginner at this transdisciplinarity, and so today I'm going to present some simple ways of looking at what do we mean by a transdisciplinary thinking. So let me get my slide. The title of my talk is A Note on Transdisciplinary Thinking and the Art of Meaning Making in a Complex World. Well, we are in a very complex world. I don't need to say it. Just pandemic itself. It's a huge socioeconomic, psychological issue. So I like to quote Einstein, who said, we can solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them, all right? And this is sort of related to Paul's notion of transcendental, all right? And all consciousness, so to speak, all right? So today I have just a few thoughts to share, very, very simple, elementary, compared with you guys, all right? But I think it's in sync with all what you have presented in a very simple, elementary approach. I like to, I want to make it smaller. Okay, so it's better. I like to share the story of Charles Darwin and his good friend John Gould. Many years ago, when Darwin came back from his 5-year trip, he collected a number of samples of birds and things like that. And then it was not well labeled, so he gets to his good friend John Gould, who was the top zoologist. So after a few days, John come back to Charles, say, hey, here is all my label. You know, there are 13 species, and here are all the details. And turn out 13 species match the 13 islands that Charles visited. Anyway, the story goes, so, but that's the end of it. But on the other hand, Charles Darwin asked the question, what are the possibilities of if I leave the species on one island, whether they can mutate or change? So, and here comes, eventually comes the theory of evolution. So, what I'm trying to show in the simple example is that disciplinary thinking is often self-limiting, in particular, dealing with the kinds of complex problems we are facing today. But almost everyone has self-limiting assumptions, all right? And I want to share the story of Napoleon and Robert Fulton, who was the inventor of the steam engine, and once went to, he was an advisor of Napoleon. So he came to Napoleon one day and say, no, you know, if you could use my steam engine under your boat, then you could have a steamboat which will defeat the British Navy. And Napoleon being a army general, and told Robert, well, you know, I really don't have time to listen to such nonsense. You mean you put the fire under my deck and setting against the wind? This is crazy. Well, just imagine if Napoleon had adapted to agree to build a steamboat with his navy, what would have happened? This picture here is one that many years ago, 25 years ago, so I used to conduct some seminars for corporate groups. And at that time, I think we had about 50-some people. And I always ask themselves to draw a picture of themselves. And afterwards, we hang the picture on the wall and have an art show. And this one is what? It's not the original one, but this is one picture that shows a sad face chained to a post. So after we had the art show, you know, we talk about it, and to my surprise, almost 90% of people said this picture is also reflects who they are. What does it mean? Well, you're tied to something. Some are family, some are location, some are whatever. All right. So everyone is tied to something, which I call self-limiting assumption. And I think this is what happened with the difference between disciplinary thinking to so-called multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and finally transdisciplinary thinking. Trend means that we get together, right? So I'd like to then talk a little bit about what I think is the first transdisciplinary in the West, all right? Leonardo da Vinci. And he's an artist, designer, and scientist, and we all know that. And what I like to do is to sort of synthesize a little bit of what I know about his method of looking at things and why he called it then a transdisciplinary. All right. I mean, he is combining art and designing and science all together in many of his work. What I have learned, or I try to conclude, is that he has 4 characteristics in his thinking, which I call transdisciplinary thinking. First of all, high consciousness. I mean, as Einstein said, we cannot solve the problem in the same level as we created it. We have to go to a higher level consciousness or higher level thinking. And high concept. And in fact, what since he is looking at the world, seeing the nature of the model as a mentor, so he has an interconnected worldview. So much more so than his traditional disciplinary concept. And then when I talk about high touch, is that he is able to make meaningful connections of ideas. And so in the sense that to understand the phenomena meant connecting it with other phenomena through a similarity pattern, right? So that we make connections between, say, disciplines. Then also occur the notion of high energy. So since he always works on several diverse projects together at the same time, and he keep on updating other projects when he gets some insight from this project. All right. So this is the 4 characteristics that I deduce from Leonardo's work to talk about the notion of transdisciplinary thinking. So I give some examples, but I don't have much insight, all right, in terms of real world problem solving, like pandemic we're facing today, all right? It's clearly a transdisciplinary problem, all right? How do we get a handle on that? I have no idea yet, because it involves social, economic, psychological, all kinds of stuff, all right? But let's just have some concept of what we're talking about. Here I look at modern architecture, all right, and look at some of the evolution that it has. Modern architecture is defined more or less by the notion of form follows function. Right? But if you look at which Frank Lloyd is the major leader in that world. But if you also look at him, he also created the notion of the falling water house, which is famous in the sense that in he wrote a poem about a house, but I won't have time to talk about it today, which talk about the form and its environment outside is one. He talk about no house can sit on anything. And so it's the integration of that form follow function into a bigger, more coherent architecture. Now here's another one by another architect, Mike Pierce. And this is a big complex in the Zimbabwe many years ago, I think in the 70s. And the question is, Zimbabwe always have, 100-degree weather during the day, and then, 30 or 40 or 50 degrees in the night, the temperature difference is dramatic because it's in desert. And the question is, how can he design a complex, a huge complex, without air conditioning? And what he did is he looked at how insects build their mound, and by creating different channels underground to regulate the temperature. So he learned that, he combined the two fields together and create this huge complex without air conditioning by taking the cool air underground and letting them out by shutting the windows, opening the channels downstairs, so forth. All right. So that's a wonderful combination of two disciplines. And then later in the 90s, architect Bill McDonald and chemist wrote a book called Cradle to Cradle Design. In the sense, the whole design of any complex has no waste. Of course, we know well about biological waste, but what about the technical waste? The sofa, the carpet, the chairs, and so forth. And the notion is that they want, of course, they are, so this is sort of ecological design. They want to make sure that this is not for themselves, but for the future, for the whole world, for all their generations of children that coming up in the future. So this we talk about the notion of high consciousness as well as high energy, because you have to continue to innovate to keep on looking at different kind of ways how to facilitate the treatment. All right. So now I want to give you a couple more examples. Let me know if my time is up, then I go fast. All right. So I'm only talking about some examples about transdisciplinary thinking. And here is the story of North Hawaiian Community Hospital in the Big Island of Hawaii. And the person behind it used to be the founder of the big medical equipment company. So in the traditional view of design, there are three factors we have to consider. Desirability, which is also more like a requirement. Viability, whether this requirement is reasonable. Then feasibility is how do we realize this requirement. And if you look at the requirement is that our vision is to treat the whole individual, body, mind, and spirit, through a team approach to patient-centered care. And ultimately, it becomes the most healing hospital in the world. All right. So this is their vision. By the way they set the hospital is located in the middle of 5 volcanoes, so can get all the great energy from the volcano. And in order to realize that requirement, and the team come up with what we mean by patient-centered. Right? So they want to use high tech, that's reasonable. High touch is not the same as the high touch I said, but high touch means that they want the patients to be touched all the time, in a sense. They don't get to see, say, a different nurse every day, all right? For people who stay there for a week or two, they want to see the same nurse, for example, all right? And they want to provide the ideal environment for the patient. For example, every room, the hospital is only one story because every room open up into the garden. Then finally, how do you really do that? All right. So they come up with a beautiful way of looking at the patient-centeredness. All right. If they look at internal and external, physical and physiological aspects. So I won't have time to go into the detail. Internal and physical, they said patient is a partner in healing. Then external and physical is healing with physical environment. For example, everybody goes into a garden if they want to. All right. Then finally, internal and physiological, they said patient is a healer. All right. Psychologically, if they change their mind and they get to heal, all right, better, and then create external and physiological, create an environment to all relationships in healing, all right, which I talk about a little bit. So to give you a little more detail about the hospital design, I say describe in terms of high consciousness, high concept, high touch, and high energy. All right. High consciousness, because the founders, they want to pay a tribute to Hippocrates by making the island Hawaii to be the healing island in the 21st century. High concept is vision to become the most patient-centered hospital in the world. And high touch, open to all forms of healing based on patient's desire. So in that hospital, a patient under the supervision of one doctor, Western doctor, can ask for Hawaii healing, Chinese acupuncture, energy healing, all that is open. And when they check into the hospital, they can pick all the internal decorations from a museum-like art store. And they can also ask for the desired music in their room. All right. And high energy is the continuous refinement of patient-centered environment. What does it mean when you say really patient? Besides the blended and complementary medicine, but they also make sure change the organizational workflow based on the patient's needs. So they change the nursing stations from a traditional hospital so that the patient gets to see familiar faces of nurses all the time. In a sense, the nurse station has changed so that 5 nurses seeing 8 patients. That's it. All right. So that's one example. I'm sorry, I can't go into more details today, but just here's another one, the Great South African Experiment. All right. And this is really a tough one. This is Kurt Derrick, the previous president, and newly elected president, Mandela. And though this is picture taken, they both got the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, the process is not at all easy at all right? And because they were at each other's throat, trying to kill each other. And if when the first election, all right, about the president happened, the world was watching and expecting bloodshed, but nothing happened like that. And it's peaceful transition from the white to the black, all right? And so how did it happen? And this is part of trying to illustrate the process of how to tackle tough problems, right? Well, before the election, there were over 100 workshops that going on for the whole country. But the first workshop was held in a place where a lot of people from different groups of society, black and white, all invited together to talk about the future of South Africa. And in that group, sometimes people have very deep, hurting history. For example, somebody may talk to another person and say, well, you killed, or say a black person, say the white person, his grandfather or something was killed by the other person's grandfather or something like that. So it's a mixed group, but despite all that, they're willing to look at the situation together. What they have done is they create 4 scenarios for the future of South Africa. All right. Indicate by the pictures here. Ostrich. All right. And means the white government doesn't want to make the transition power. They just stick their head into the sand. Or the lame duck, all right, the making the prolonged, weakened transitional government, much like what we're facing now today in the United States. All right, Icarus is a Greek story in the old days when the city was being surrounded. The father created a big bird made of wax and have his son sitting on it, fly out of the, because the city was about to be sacked. All right. Unfortunately, the bird was really well made, fly very high, and melted when the sun came up. All right. So that won't work. That means that if a black government embark on a huge sustainable spending program, then the economy will be crashed. And finally, the flamingo is a scenario demonstrating the fact that the flamingos, the bird take off very slowly. However, as one bird take off, all take off, they go together. So those are the 4 possible scenarios that the workshop came up. And they picked the flamingo because that's the only way they can move forward in the group of 50 people attending the workshop. Since then, though, more than 100 workshops like this is spreading. And eventually, the whole country was sold throughout those workshops that flamenco is the way to go. And so how do we go from the apartheid syndrome to the Democratic Republic? And the process, again, can be seen from the 4 characteristics that I deduced from the Da Vinci. High consciousness, to see collectively the possibility beyond each participant's view to reach a solution for all. High concept, looking at the scenarios, all right, and then take into consideration social, political, economic, and international considerations, because these groups all came from government and others, all in high positions, but they sit down and look at all this into consideration. High touch, and involving leaders from most of the key national constitutions, and hence embracing an independent worldview, or interdependent worldview, so that they know they are eventually for the better of the country, and as they are such a citizen there, all right, they better embracing an interdependent worldview. And finally, there's no grand plan, but they also eventually use creative teamwork to identify and influence critical current choices. All right. So these are the things that are deduced from the works that have done in the there's a book called Solving Tough Problems, and this story is taken right out of that book. So and I have a quote here: the Truth Commission helped us to move away from the past to concentrate on the present and future. And I won't go into detail, but I want to take this moment to talk about the transitional, because whether disciplinary thinking or silo thinking, apartheid attitude, it's all self-centered. And which means we look at the consequence is expansion, competition, quantity, and domination, which is the worldview, say, in the United States today. And transdisciplinary thinking has a worldview of oneness. If you have such a worldview, you have conservation, cooperation, quality, and partnership. And during this whole period of transitional, even after Mandela was elected president, he used all kinds of methods to try to blend the 2 cultures in South Africa together. And there's a movie which says he used the rugby provided a meaningful creation for the 2 groups melt together. All right. So this is a simple, yes, let me have just one final way to this is sort of the transdisciplinary thinking framework I talk about, all right? And this is in concert with all what you have been talking about, all right, before. And I want to make a final remark on the application to education. All right. The key in the high consciousness is, as I said in the beginning, how to break the self-limiting assumption. If we can teach students to do that, then the rest of the thing open up automatically. But if we don't, we are not able to help students to make that transition. It's very difficult to do the rest. And I think that in my mind is, if we can, I actually have a junior high school in China that I'm helping to transform to be the first junior high school in China accepting the transdisciplinary education. And this is where we are focusing now. And we are teaching them to tell stories by learning from the traditional Chinese culture. What are the stories that break self-limiting assumptions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. Thanks a lot for your long speech to the audience. You can express, I hope so, everything you wanted to share with us. So I don't lose time, and I propose directly to Magda to finish this turn of the presentations. Unfortunately, Javier had to leave us. He still have new lessons to give. So I will encourage for every people who would like to ask things to him to talk directly. And now we are very pleased to introduce Magda Stavinsky. Please, Magda, you can enjoy your time.
And before starting my presentation, I like to thank the organizers to offer me such exciting experience, because during this epoch of pandemic, when we are afraid even to meet a neighbor, we are able to how to say, to meet each other from so long distances without leaving our homes. So as I have to share the screen, maybe, no? Okay. One moment. Okay, I am astronomer, and I am involved in the transdisciplinary team in Romania.
Magda, sorry to interrupt you. If you want to share something, we don't see it.
It's okay. Share screen share. Now
Okay, it's coming. Now it's coming. Thank you. Okay, we see your full screen now.
Yes, I don't see full. Okay, thank you. But not the full screen. I like to give you. Okay, now it's okay. Yes, thank you.
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so as I have to repeat, I am astronomer, and I am also involved in transdisciplinary in Romania. So I suggest as topic, astronomy as transdisciplinary approach to science and education in all levels, so in the school. As you know, science is a systematic endeavor to understand the world based on evidence and testable explanations. The term scientific discipline, often used interchangeably with a branch of science, is very important for didactic and academic purposes. In fact, the term discipline is etymologically related to power and boundary keeping. Disciplines are specific social and organizational units that are historically situated. In Aristotle's time, only 7 disciplines were clearly defined. The progress of academic knowledge through Renaissance and Enlightenment led to an explosion of in the number of disciplines. As a result, in 2006, science encompassed no less than 8,000 disciplines. Today, there might be more than 10,000. From a didactic point of view, this entails a very fragmented horizon. To make up for this shortcoming, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches have been adopted in school for a long time now. Either two or more disciplines were combined into one activity, or one aspect was looked at from different perspectives. But it was only in 1970 when Jean Piaget coined the term transdisciplinarity, an entirely new concept used to signify a unity of knowledge beyond disciplines. In 1987, the International Center for Transdisciplinary Research, CIRET, was founded under the leadership of Basarab Nicolescu, who adopted in 1997 the Charter of Transdisciplinarity as its first World Congress in Portugal. Transdisciplinarity concerns that which is at once between disciplines, across the different disciplines, and beyond each individual discipline. According to Basarab Nicolescu, transdisciplinarity is nevertheless radically distinct from multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity because of its goal, the understanding of the present world, which cannot be accomplished in the framework of disciplinary research. Transdisciplinarity has a spectacular evolution in its 50 years of existence, reaching the level of education at an early age. I will, of course, talk about how it has permitted the Romanian education system. In the beginning, transdisciplinarity was met with skepticism, like any other novelty in a field. Will children understand the new approach? What will it be useful for? How will it be taught in the context of online education? There are clear answers to all of this. Children are much more open to the novelty than adults. I will only give the example of introducing set theory in primary school. Children got the idea much more easily than their parents. In the context of changing a profession from one year to another, the transdisciplinarity training helps the smooth transition from one object to another. It is extremely suitable for online teaching thanks to its methodological structure and the visual ways it offers. But what is the best way for children to achieve an overarching vision of everything around them, which would stimulate learning classical disciplines with all that they have new? I think that teaching astronomy through the transdisciplinary methodology can only be beneficial for students. It is a book I am co-authoring. Thanks to Basarab Nicolescu, transdisciplinarity was introduced relatively quickly in Romania. In 2010, a draft law was published stipulating that the graduates of the last class in the Lyceum College will take a written transdisciplinary test in Romanian language and literature and the language of international circulation, as well as a written transdisciplinary test in mathematics and natural sciences for the scientific curriculum, and in socio-human sciences, history, geography, economics, sociology, and psychology for the humanistic curriculum. Clearly, those who drafted the law did not understand the transdisciplinary means. As a result, on 16 December 2019, the National Transdisciplinary Assessment and the changes in the baccalaureate were postponed in the context in which so far the teaching learning assessment process has not been done transdisciplinary, and there are currently no framework plans and high school programs based on a transdisciplinary approach. First of all, since teachers did not receive any specific training, students could not benefit from the transdisciplinary teaching. In addition, the unprecedented challenges in education during this special year of the pandemic have inevitably delayed the introduction of any new methodology. With many teachers struggling to master online teaching, it is hard to believe they could cope with any other new method. So after almost 10 years since the ministry suggested introducing transdisciplinary schools, we haven't moved 1 inch forwards. Teachers still need to understand what transdisciplinary thinking is. This does not mean that there are no teachers who do not want what we are talking about, only that they are rather an exception. Pasaram Nicolescu himself stated that experiments were made in several countries, such as Canada or Brazil. As for Romania, he cites remarkable experiments made in Arad at the Moise Nicoară High School. Asked what the outcome was from transdisciplinary point of view, he said, the main gain is internal flexibility. We are in a society in which unemployment looks at very step in which changing a profession will be an absolute necessity. This was a motivation that made me think of astronomy the main lever for applying transdisciplinary in school. Here are diagrams that justify this statement. All of them are more or less addressed to the school curriculum, and all of them are related to the universe. As astronomy is a natural science which uses mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology in order to explain the origin and evolution of the universe. It is also part of the culture. We find it in painting, music, literature, history, folklore, etc. In the age of globalization, science is becoming increasingly important as people are facing the same problems: health, environment, communication, etc. In order to show astronomy can be a useful lever of transdisciplinary education in school, I will remind once again the difference between transdisciplinarity on the one hand and inter and multidisciplinary on the other. Transdisciplinary concerns what lies at the same time between disciplines and within various disciplines and beyond any discipline. Its finality is the understanding of the present world. One of its goals is the unity of knowledge. This is exactly what astronomy does. Its object of study is the universe, and the universe is looked at from different perspectives, raising questions and seeking answers which go beyond complementary disciplinary knowledge. Although it is not taught as such in the school curriculum, astronomical elements can be found in many disciplines. Now then, education aims precisely at preparing young people to get to know the world, to approach various professions depending on the time and place where they are. Human knowledge began with global, holistic, integral knowledge if we refer to the almost 2 millennia of European culture. The need for new, more comprehensive insights has led to the creation of new fields based on interdisciplinarity. This is how, as a junction between biology and chemistry, a new field named biochemistry emerged. As a junction between ethics and medical practice, we had bioethics, and so on. The number of interdisciplines has exponentially increased. Interdisciplinarity was an avant-garde that has already become classic, although it continues to thrive. 4 decades ago, Jean Piaget launched a novel concept, transdisciplinarity, at a congress on the interdisciplinarity in Geneva. The congress was entitled Interdisciplinary Teaching and Research Problems in Universities. Efforts to promote this concept have been successfully coordinated ever since by the Romanian physicist and philosopher Pasaram Nicolescu. They have convincingly shown that transdisciplinarity, far from being a fad, is a real need for education and even more for research. Today, especially in the context of the changes brought about in the world by the current pandemic, many young people realize that taking a second or even a third faculty course can help them meet the demands of employers. Also, in my opinion, the transdisciplinary methodology has not been properly understood. We must take steps so that young people in their understanding of the world do not lose sight of the big picture. Today, it is more relevant than ever, as physical isolation due to the pandemics contributes to a fragmented perception of reality. Internet communication should give the chance to think transdisciplinarily in order to sort out current or future problems. Here is where astronomy can help. Through its universality, it can become an important field of transdisciplinary education. Whenever a young man asks me how to become an astronomer, I answer, you must know mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, but also history, philosophy, literature, art, have a universal culture. What could more impressive and appealing to young men than remind him of famous musical pieces such as Moonlight Sonata, poems like Shakespeare's, cosmic motifs in folklore, who has never seen Van Gogh's famous painting The Starry Night, or even the history of astronomy, beginning with the civilization of Mesopotamia, Greece, Persia, India, China, Central America, or the monument of Stonehenge or San Misegetuza Regia in Romania. What about theology? In many schools around the world, I go back to the example of Romania, the curriculum includes religious classes. How can we explain the first grade children, the Genesis, coupled with what they learn from science classes or the media about the birth of the universe? Which young person hasn't read at least one short story or seen at least one science fiction movie? But in order to understand what is going on there, in order to accept fiction, you must have at least some minimal knowledge of science. As if we talk about mysteries, let's just mention a few famous puzzles like, is there other life in the universe? Especially, is there other intelligent life? The existence of life elsewhere has important scientific and philosophical implications. Is the solar system normal or atypical? What is the nature of dark matter and dark energy? What will be the ultimate fate of the universe? Here are just a few brief arguments for using astronomy as a lever for teaching transdisciplinary school. In other words, this is one of the goals of the International Astronomical Union for the strategic plan 2020-2030. The IAU stimulates the use of the astronomy for teaching and education at school level. So, I believe, and it's my challenge that proposed to you, the astronomy could be a transdisciplinary approach to science education on all levels. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry, I was disturbed by one of my 6 years old girls and I didn't listen.
I'm sorry, don't advise you that I finished.
Okay, thank you. You went so fast at the end that I wasn't, I didn't pay enough attention. Sorry for this. So Paul also had to leave the group of the speakers. So it's time now for the audience. If you want to share some comments or ask questions to Ray, Magda, or I, it's time you can use the chat. Please write in English if possible, and please make short comments or questions we will share all together. So I see that Paul wrote something, but you will discuss. It was a discussion with a participant. Sorry. Alors, well, we have 39 people online right now who did follow the speakers session. I noticed before some remarks or questions, but they were addressed to Javier and to Paul, so they are not able to answer anymore.
May I put you a question?
Of course.
You talk about, if I well understood, about competition and in the school at the age of young people. It is a question very often put around me. If the children could be, how to say, pressed for the competition or not. Yes, I am not, I don't agree the competition, but at the same time stimulating the future elite. It means if you are between the first stage, first group of class, you could better, how to say, have a better future. I'd like to know something more about your opinion.
Yes, okay, thank you very much, Magda. You allow me now to make some theoretical precisions about intelligence, because competition in itself has no useful meaning. What does mean to be first, second, third? There is a pseudo-called science, which is docimology, in French, probably the same in English, docimology, which is the art of assessment and the art of giving A, B, C, D appreciation on children performances. Most of the studies shows that the result you gain of your assessment evaluation might differ totally from an examiner to another one. So it's not a scientific approach, the evaluation, and any comparison or any competition which is just evaluated by very short factors might not be totally secure and partial. Another problem is what kind of evaluation are we focused on? If we observe the curriculars at almost in France, most of the lessons are oriented in mathematic acquisitions, linguistic verbal acquisitions, and competencies, and also logical acquisitions. But someone I love a lot, which is Howard Gardner, explains that there is not only those 2 intelligences, but 9. He explains that there is the self-knowledge intelligence, the knowledge of interactions with other people intelligence, the natural intelligence, which is the capacity to get in contact with animals and nature, the musical intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, dance, moving, of course, mathematical and called intelligences, and 9 ones is existentialist intelligence. So if school programs, curriculars, just focus on mathematics and language, and evaluation comparison are focused on those 2 ones, what happens with the children who are much more artistic oriented, who are much more musicians, dancers? If we have education just focused on the mental, not on the capacity of the earth, of the control and transformation of emotions, of the control and expression of the body, of the capacity to get open consciousness that you're part of the human kin, that you're part of the biotope, the ecology of the planet. You are separating children and people, and you create a false competition, because no one lives just by himself against the others. We much increase the consciousness that we are all living on just one little place. That's why it's so important to be able to overcome the difficulties, the competition, the fight we have with others. And most of the time, if we are in fight with others, probably it's because we have also fights inside of us. Remember Basarab's proposition, violence starts inside of us. If we are able to increase peace inside of us, how much easier it will be to live in peace with others and to avoid the strength, the will to compare, assess, evaluate, which is nonsense. I understood you said maybe if we are competitive, we can obtain better job, better position. I'm not sure it's the only way, and probably not the better way. A global approach, which is a transdisciplinary approach of education, is probably much more helpful to find peace and good action with us, peace and good action with others, peace and good action with nature and the planet. It was a long explanation, sorry.
Thank you for your explanations. I understand, but it is you mentioned that school is focused on disciplines. When we are speaking of mathematics or language or I don't know logic and so on, it means it is not a transdisciplinary approach of the school. It is our purpose exactly. But if you mention the name of Basarab, maybe you know or you don't know that he was a winner for the International Olympiad of Mathematics, for the National Olympiad of Romanian Language. So he has, at the beginning, a transdisciplinary, how to say, knowledge. Thank you.
Yes, but to not focus on comparisons doesn't mean you can't be someone extraordinary in the fields you choose or in the fields where you have abilities, capacities, knowledge, facilities. Of course, the question is not to make everyone equal. The focus is to help to go everyone else, whatever is its shapes and interest, to go further and as far as possible in the way he likes or he chooses or he needs or the community needs, like, choose, and in good intelligence That's why we can focus on personal intelligence, but also in collective intelligence. We really need to increase our collective intelligence if we want to make something useful for the collective and so, of course, for the individual. So the question is not to be equal, but to increase your personal abilities. I can understand for you, the youngest people and the youngest one, it might be helpful to know if they are situated on the average or maybe a little bit under or upper, which means they have facilities or which means they have to focus on special learnings to increase their knowledge or abilities. But this is just an help. It must not be a definitive assessment. And the problem of traditional school, of course, they are separating disciplines, as you said perfectly just before. And most of the time, if you have bad results in a discipline, the young one might imagine and stop his interest on this discipline and says, I'm too bad. Never I will be able to increase and be a better person, etc., etc. That's why the teacher has to be very attentive, subtle, in order to help and accompany with a personal, as much as possible, help to every pupil of the classroom. And this also because it's very hard just for one teacher with 20, 30, sometimes 40 students. That's why he has to help to construct small groups, bigger ones, and help the students and learners to go in self-apprendance, auto-apprendance, and capacities of self and collective learnings. In this way, the goal will not be to evaluate and compare one against all the other ones, but help to all the group to take consciousness of its value, the value of the collective due to the value of the personals. It's a huge file of already knowledge and practice. We find them in what we call the new school, l'école nouvelle, which is old of 150 years already, and Jean Piaget, you mentioned, was part with his principles to help teachers to have collective acquisitions and activities. That's it.
I have a question for you. I heard that Denmark has stitched its disciplinary education into sort of transdisciplinary education. Do you have any insight? How do they do it?
Effectively, in northern European countries and also in Finland, I know better the case of Finland. They decided to not continue the learning for the young people with the different disciplines. They are much more now focused on projects. They are working in projects, interdisciplinary projects. And Magda, you saw it perfectly on some of your slides, different approaches of the astronomy by the social, the cultural, different aspects like those ones. And it's very interesting because this interdisciplinary approach of topics is a way for the global transdisciplinary approach that Magda also you figurize in different ways, squares, different shapes, up, crossed, etc. I loved a lot. I loved a lot of your pictures. And then the goal of this, as I understand it, is to emphasize the awareness of the importance of the ability to have direct, concrete action on the world, and not only to manipulate concepts in your mind, because you might be a genius, but a very indigent people. And we have a lot of examples of genius who was just in the incapacity of cooking for themselves, to feed themselves, as an example. That's why I propose the human temple, to develop all abilities. You might be a genius, but oh, it was my own sound, sorry. But that's it. That's why it's important to develop all your abilities, bodies, emotions, mental, supramental, which we call spirituality. That's it.
No, this is very good, because I think this is what needs to happen, because a project-based concept for kids, or even to learn not only how a group can tackle a problem through their different talents within the group or discipline. And this is what, I mean, given the pandemic today, you know, for example, in the United States, we are a bad example. All right, there's no coordination at all. Right, we are not utilizing the different talents, because all the knowledge for each talent. So that's wonderful.
Everything is important. You know, the learning process is really a long time process. In this process, you have to explore, I think, everything, including mistakes.
Of course. I mean, that's how we learn, right?
Mistakes help to learn, and to realize you're going on the wrong way, much give you the sense to try something different, which is better for you and your relation with others and the planet. So everything has a sense, everything is need, and the most important thing is not stay focused just on the evaluation, assessment, notation, but always keep in mind the openness. I think so.
And one of the things, the question is, to me, it's fundamental. You talk about the transcendental aspect, right? And so, is that part of the curriculum, or should that be part of the curriculum? For, in my presentation, the high consciousness is that. And you have to keep on going up on your conscious level, all right, as you present it. And the question is should that part of the curriculum?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question, and it's a very difficult one, because it all depends on the habits and the cultural aspects of the societies where you would like to make clearly lessons include in the curricula, dealing with the consciousness, with the increasing of the sensibility, etc., etc. And in those different culture, you could have some confessional schools, or secular schools, or free schools, and they all have a point of view different maybe about this question. I think there is, of course, not just one answer, as always, but many. And the smart thing is to try to keep the best solutions depending on the situation. I personally really agree that we could include some special teachings on the subject of transdisciplinarity, consciousness, spirituality, etc. And it's already done in some private school, at least in France. As an example, for children of the age of 16, they have in private school 1 hour per week devoted to the name in France is Carrefour Humain et Spirituel, which we could translate but the cross between humanity and spirituality. And it's not a religious teaching. Of course, it mentions things about religion, but it's much more focused on human qualities as fraternity, care, helpful, liberty, the much more beautiful human values we all have inside of us, whatever is our anthropocentric base level. And the second option, and maybe I would prefer that one, is to teach teachers how to become themselves through examples of the values they would like to see inside the children and the learners. You know, this is the famous sentence of Gandhi: be yourself the change you would like to see in the world. And once again, it starts inside of us. There is no sense to wait that the changes and evolution starts from the outside if we are not yet prepared and starters as ourselves of these changes. So the question now is how to teach this to the teachers. And this was one of the questions of Krishnamurti.
So
We have
go ahead, please.
We have to think collectively about this. I think that Julieta would like to say something. We don't listen you, Julieta. Your microphone, please.
Julieta, open your microphone.
Okay, please excuse. I tend to speak in English, and my English is very difficult one. In the presentation, it's very interesting the main factors in the process of education. But I think that is important integrate the power in the process, because we think that in all the factors in the transdisciplinary education, and think it's very important the dimension of the power. This is my comment. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Julieta. You're perfectly right. In most of the traditional learning process, there is something we call the learn of lose your power.
Mm-hmm.
How teachers learn pupils to lose their power to be themselves, power to be an actor, good actor in the society, etc., etc. And of course, in the transdisciplinary education, we try to focus how to get your power. How can you change yourself? How can you be self-confident to get the strength and the volunteer to be the better part of yourself? And when you've done this, how can you interact with others to go in this kind of way? And finally, to construct a better world, more responsible, more sensitive, more beautiful, with including the nature with you. I see that we have many questions on the YouTube chat. Maybe it's time to deal with this. I take them by order of apparition. So Maria asked me, in what your vision of this Eden, as you posited here, differs from that of Basarabs? This is a theoretical question. We could answer by the reduction of articles. Maybe I will not focus now on theoretical points of the process. I would prefer we go deeply in some very practical things, if you don't mind, Maria. A question for Magda. Transdisciplinary education is now being known in Romania. Teacher use with this methodology. So I propose we have short answers and short questions. Magda, would you like to answer?
Yes, as I said, transdisciplinarity is known in Romania, but not for everybody. I mean, not for all teachers. But there are schools, as I mentioned, one of them, where the transdisciplinarity won a good place in the education. But now with the schools, how to say, in Romania, only online, it's difficult to promote a new methodology if the teachers are trying to accommodate with communications by online and so on. So we hope when the situation will be better at the national level, we have a good transdisciplinary teaching in Romania.
Thank you very much, Magda, for this focus. A question for me. Do your students receive the transdisciplinary approach easily? Not at all. Absolutely not. Because the thing very strange is that the more you are educated in high-level schools until the doctorate, the more you lose your power. Because as I said before, if you want to increase in the classification of academy, the more you have to accept things or do things that you would never accept if you would be a totally free man or totally free woman. So the more you are so-called smart, the more you are able to accept oppression, discrimination, and finally, very bad relationships. So when I talk to my students about the consciousness or the spirituality, they open eyes like this because they were never taught about these questions. They are all coming from philosophy, mathematics, geography, French, and they are probably very smart people and very specialists with very good rates, but they are just focused and they don't have the total view of the whole complexity of the teaching profession. And as I said before, when I offer them to have a free speech, they can be very angry and very rude and telling to me, which I'm not sure I'm the good one to receive what they have to say. But because I have the responsibility to be with them, of course, I have to help them to transform their hungry, to transform their sadness into something much more beautiful and much more useful. How to transform the hungriness into a strength for change. This is a challenge.
May I add something? Coming back to Romania, it was a very high competition to obtain, how to say, PhD stage to Basarab Nicolescu, because he directed a lot of PhD doctorate in Romania. And I suppose in the international level, there are also candidates for doctor stages.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a question for Ray. What do you understand for higher conscious? Not too long, please, Ray, your answer. What do you understand for higher consciousness?
Well, consciousness is multiple levels. If we take a simple view of Maslow's hierarchy of, all right, then at the lower level, we're hungry, we have to take care of our stomach and all that. They eventually become self-actualization. But in a way, when you look at consciousness from different viewpoints, there's a lot of study, scientific study on consciousness nowadays. Dr. Mitchell, who was the sixth person to walk on the moon, when he came back, and suddenly, you know, as his vehicle going around the world, suddenly he felt he's one with everything. And that, as a physicist, he doesn't understand that at all right? So then when he came back to Earth, he learned about the Indian philosophy and so forth. He formed the Institute for Noetic Sciences, right? And to study the science and spirituality. And so that's one that there's a lot of study looking at the consciousness. The Buddha has a very complete description of consciousness. I mean, what we see, hear, and smell, all is part of it, but only part of it, all right? And Buddhists believe, for example, the previous life. So, in fact, all that is in our consciousness, so to speak, but it's in a storage that sometimes we cannot get access to. Right? So when I talk about consciousness, I can talk about, for example, if you look at the South African experience from a very selfish point of view, you know, either the black wants to take over and take all the money from the white, all right, and redistribute it to, hey, let's work on this together to benefit all right? So it's a level of, the consciousness going up. And if you look at many of the study of, say, transcendental meditation, you can change your view, right, by deep meditation. So the level of consciousness is a way you look at world and yourself differently as you go up. In the eventually is that we're all one, like what Edgar Mitchell experienced. We are all one. From, say, I'm a separate person, you're my friend, or you're my enemy, all right? And in the highest level, there is no enemy. We're all one. And if you go up in consciousness, your view of the world is different, right? That's what I talk about. Then you have the high. You can look at the intersection of two, for example, disciplines, much more clearly than at the lower level. Like Darwin's friend John Gould. I am only a zoologist. That's it. I can do categorization, but I don't care about anything else. Right. So that's sort of a short explanation of my simple understanding. And by the way, the meditation is a way to reach higher consciousness. At least that's my own experience.
Thank you, Ray, for sharing your experience. That's my will, that we are discussing about practices and what practices are doing with us and with the others. I don't refuse theoretical discussion, of course, but I think what is important is to un ida y vuelta, aller et retour, go in, go forth, between all those aspects. We still have very interesting sentences on the chat that people agreeing what we are talking about, or expressing some special points, like the importance of decolonization of ourselves, of course. And what else? Do we still have some questions? We have about less than 10 minutes to finish this session, which will end with a video, the same one than the beginning. So maybe we can continue with 1 or 2 or 3 ideas to share or to discuss. Something I would like just to share with the audience. The questions I am dealing with now is that one. What are the requisite, the prerequisite? What are the skills, abilities, and competencies we have to develop first in order to enter in the way of the knowledge, of the acquisitions, of the teachings? I talk a little bit about autonomy, the capacity of autonomy, but also probably the capacity to be patient, the capacity to be calm, and very probably the practice of meditation is a help for this. But does it mean we have to include practices of meditation inside the curriculars and inside the schools? That's a question which is already answered. Most of public schools in Toronto, Canada, are already practicing what's the name?
Transcendental meditation.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness, yes.
Mindfulness. Mindfulness is a strong practice which is already inside some of public schools in Toronto. Even in France, there is an association called Association pour la méditation en enseignement, Association for the Practice of Meditation inside teachings, which is also dealing with these aspects. So I think we have a lot of possibilities to enter inside the transdisciplinary being and the transdisciplinary practices. And the good thing, I think, is to discuss between teachers, with the administration, with the parents, with the students, what they think about what should be education. And it's not just an idea, it's an obligation which is wrote inside the international convention. I'm trying to translate in French to English. Convention internationale des droits de l'enfant, International Convention of Children's Rights. In this International Convention of Children's Rights, it's wrote, you have to ask to the child their opinion of whatever concerns them. So, of course, education is one of the first concerns of the children. And administration, teachers, governments should give the speech to the children about what they think about the education they receive. It's a right, a fundamental right. But are we applying it enough in our practice? What else on the chat or on the with the speakers?
It's a tough question. What does it mean, children's right? Right. But I think we have to go away from when I was youngster, when I learned in the school, is what in Chinese they stuff the duck, right? The teacher come, I know the stuff, I just give it to you. And then I grade you based on what you learn, right? But rather than say other teachers is to motivate the youngsters to learn by themselves, right? So I don't know what, I think children have, it's a different way of thinking about education. And I think in the transdisciplinary education, this ought to be part of it. That is, with the project-based and things, let children not only learn how to think, but how to work with other people. Because if you look at the problem today now, whether it's ecological, or otherwise, pandemic, you can't solve the problem by yourself. You have to work with others. You have to learn other stuff, all right, what the other people have possessed, so that we can integrate all this together to look at problems. I give you examples. 20 years ago, when NASA have a new program, and they have a mission to Mars. Usually a mission is what they are designing and all the stuff, and which usually take about 6 months. Now they try the new program. They bring all the people involved in the project, the experts, together three times a week. All right, they have their. At that time, they don't have powerful, desktop computers, so they have their computer hooked to the supercomputer because they need to compute. So they just talk. And when they have problems, they talk, and then the expert plug in and calculate. And what they have done is they reduce the project from 6 months to 6 weeks. All right, so this is sort of the beginning of a transdisciplinary approach to their problem. All right, but they have to learn working together. They have to take each other's brain. And I think a project-based approach coupled with the notion of whatever you call mindfulness, right? And it's probably a core to the problem solving in future. But the core of it, I would say, is again, breaking the self-limiting assumptions. We all have self-limiting assumptions. And the best gift we can give the children is before they establish their self-limiting assumptions, don't have it, or break it. Let them break it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Frey, also for this sharing. It's time now to conclude this session. I would like to remind everyone that in 2 days, Friday, we will have the roundtable about the transdisciplinary and the research education, which will be conducted by 9 speakers. All speakers are members from CIRET Association, and we will discuss about health, transdisciplinary health, transdisciplinary care, same thing, transdisciplinary education, and transdisciplinary research. So it's time now to thank the speakers of the day. Magda, thanks a lot to have been with us. Ray, it was a great pleasure to meet you, to encounter and to listen to you. I hope we will have still more opportunities to exchange and discuss. I would like to thank the about 40-50 participants in real time. We get all along during those presentations. I would like to thank a lot Julieta, Marco, Octavio, and all the staff of the organizers who works a lot and very hard in order that all the online congress going on well. We are still together for about 10 months. So I hope we will have again a lot of opportunities to meet, exchange, and discuss. Thank you very much. Thank you all the team, all the tenants and participants. And maybe we can conclude now with the beautiful video presentation until our next meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all the audience too. Thanks.